We've all heard about the recent terrorist attack in Kashmir that left 26 civilians dead, but conflict in Kashmir is nothing new. It's just the latest in a long line of flashpoints that have reignited tensions between India and Pakistan. For those familiar with the region's history, this development is hardly surprising. Since the late 1940s, India and Pakistan have been locked in a never-ending rivalry, with Kashmir sitting at the heart of this beef. The real question was never if tensions would flare again, but when. While the loss of life in Kashmir is tragic, what I do want to focus on is something broader: the India-Pakistan rivalry. This rivalry has caused far more harm than good to both countries. If anything is clear after 7 decades of antagonism, it's this: India and Pakistan need to get their act together. The longer they remain at each other's throats, the more difficult it will be for both nations to reach their full potential. India and Pakistan have routinely involved themselves in geopolitical games designed to outmaneuver the other, all while draining massive amounts of financial, military and political capital in the process. But what's more nefarious is the fact that foreign powers love to capitalize and exploit rivalries. Conflict breeds opportunities for outside powers to gain influence, leverage, and control. The two nations are born of the same ancient civilization. They have closely related languages, overlapping traditions, and shared histories. They should be natural allies like the US or Canada, or Austria and Germany. Strategic logic dictates cooperation, not bitter rivalry. But how did we get here? This is what we'll talk about today: the history of the Indian-Pakistan rivalry and why is Kashmir at the center of it. Welcome to The Sovereign Thinker. Please like, share and subscribe. Let's dive in. So, the India-Pakistan conflict is linked to an event called the Partition, an event that was catastrophic. It's surprising how little people know about this, and yet it's one of the most tragic episodes in human history. So, what is partition and why is it so important? Well, in 1947, following a prolonged anti-colonial struggle, the British finally agreed, without much choice, to leave India after 197 years of rule. However, instead of leaving behind a unified India, tensions between the Muslim minority and Hindu majority was so bad that India had to split into 2 sovereign states, India and Pakistan. And at that time, Pakistan included both its western and eastern wings. The eastern was later renamed Bangladesh. This split is known as the Partition, where tens of millions of people were displaced almost overnight. Muslims began migrating toward what was to become Pakistan, while Hindus and Sikhs fled in the opposite direction. Basically, massive population exchanges took place, and it wasn't peaceful. Far from it. It was an atmosphere of violence and chaos on a level that is almost impossible to imagine. And it wasn't slow or drawn out. It was rapid, happening over just a few months. By many estimates, over 2 million people lost their lives, and again in just a few months. The partition, my fellow listeners, remains a seriously deep wound, and it continues to cast a long shadow over South Asia's politics, society, and their identity. But the seeds of division were sown long before the partition in 1947. During British colonial rule, particularly in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the British pursued a deliberate strategy of divide and rule. And a key moment came in 1909 when the British Parliament introduced the Indian Councils Act of 1909 that introduced separate electorates for Muslims with the support of the Muslim League, which was a political party within India at the time. This act essentially formalized religious identity as a distinct political category, basically saying that Muslims are an entirely different group from the rest of India. This may seem minor, but it was during a time when nationalist movements were gaining momentum in India, seeking independence from Britain. Indian nationalists, which included Hindus, Sikhs, and Muslims, were pushing for a united India. It didn't matter what religion you were, we were all Indians. In other words, you're Indian first, and then you are your religion second. That was the basic idea. And this nationalist movement was being led by the foremost political party at the time, the Indian National Congress. Interestingly, many Muslim leaders supported this vision of a united India. Among them was the later founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Jinnah was ethnically Gujarati, just like Mahatma Gandhi, but Jinnah was a Muslim and Gandhi was a Hindu. Same people, same language, same culture, only religion stood between them. but in Jinnah's early political career, he was a strong advocate for Hindu-Muslim unity. He opposed the 1909 Act, viewing it as a dangerous precedent. As Stanley Woper famously wrote in his biography of Jinnah, he abhorred separate electorates. He viewed them as a divisive and dangerous innovation that would weaken the national movement and turn Indians against one another. Despite these objections from many, including the Indian National Congress, the British colonial authorities pushed ahead, and their plan worked. This act indeed began to intensify religious mistrust, and over time, new identities were being formed based on religion, and so divisions hardened. By the 1940s, Jinnah himself had undergone a dramatic transformation, shifting from a staunch nationalist to the foremost proponent of a separate Muslim state. Like I said, Jinnah became the founder of Pakistan. The reasons for this reversal are complex, but one can clearly see the influence of British tactics that were nurturing this division and antagonism. And to add cherry on this powder keg of a cake, when the British finally left, they did so in a manner that was rushed, careless, and deeply irresponsible. They drew the borders of the modern states of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, and the man responsible for these borders was a British lawyer called Cyril Radcliffe, who, by the way, had never even been to India before. Radcliffe drew borders that took no consideration to the cultural, economic, or demographic realities. Essentially, these arbitrary lines sliced through villages, communities, and even homes. Whole regions were split with little thought given. It's hard to believe that this wasn't done on purpose on the British side. The point is, the British were never invested in nurturing India as a civilization. British interests were always purely economic. The British Empire's presence in India began with a commercial enterprise, the East India Company, and though this was eventually replaced by the Crown, the profit-driven colonial venture mindset continued. When independence became inevitable, the British were more concerned with protecting their economic interests and weakening potential geopolitical rivals as opposed to leaving behind a stable, unified India. And thus, Pakistan was created. And though it's too simplistic to say Pakistan was created solely to be a thorn in the backside of India, the geopolitical logic is unmistakable. Divide the emerging power, meaning India, so that India remains entangled in regional disputes, ultimately weakening itself, as well as Pakistan. And indeed, that is what has happened. To be fair to Pakistan, the country did have aspirations to be a secular and inclusive nation at the beginning. Its early leadership was inspired by the modernizing vision of Ataturk's Turkey, and the country even appointed a Hindu, Jogendra Nath Mandal, as its first law minister. But that vision quickly fell apart. By 1949, Islam was declared the foundation of the state, and by 1977, when General Zia al-Haq seized power, Pakistan had to implement a Sharia law, which still exists to some degree today. All this further alienated Pakistan from its neighbor India and creating more tension. But of course, India also bears responsibility for the deterioration in relations. Hindus have played their part in stoking divisions. Think of it as a vicious cycle. It began with British policies that nurtured Muslim separatism, which in turn provoked Hindu nationalists who favored a united India. These reactions deepened Muslim fears and insecurities, gradually shifting many who had initially supported unity towards supporting separation. This shift further inflamed Hindu sentiment, leading to even stronger Muslim demand for a separate state, and this inevitably led to violence, and then retaliatory attacks. Each stage then brought with it greater escalation, which ultimately culminated in the partition. Because of partition, deep-rooted animosity has been handed down to future generations. In both India and Pakistan, national identities have been shaped through this traumatic event. Selective memory, state-sponsored narratives, and even school textbooks often present a one-sided view of the story, reinforcing victimhood and vilification. Every border skirmish, diplomatic breakdown, or terrorist attack is perceived not in isolation, but as part of a larger story of betrayal and righteousness. No place better illustrates this than the highland mountainous region of Jammu Kashmir, but more commonly known as Kashmir. But why is this region at the center of attention? Well, during partition, princely states which made up British India were given the option to join either India or Pakistan. Kashmir is a Muslim majority region that was ruled by a Hindu, Maharaja Hari Singh, who initially didn't want to be a part of either Pakistan or India. But when Pakistan-backed tribal militias invaded, as they believed they were liberating their fellow Muslims from a Hindu ruler, the Maharaja turned to India for help. In return, he agreed to accede to India, triggering the First India-Pakistan War, which ended with Kashmir being split into two along the line of control, where Pakistan controls one side and India the other. Since then, Kashmir has become the main issue between the two countries. While religion is often cited as the basis for the dispute, geopolitics, as always, is key to the conflict. The region's strategic value cannot be overstated. The Indus River system is vital to Pakistan's agriculture and economy. And this river system originates up in the highlands in Indian-controlled Kashmir. This gives India considerable leverage. If conflict escalates, India could theoretically limit water flow, threatening Pakistan's survival. But in 1960, the two nations signed the Indus Waters Treaty, which basically says no messing with the water even during a conflict. While the treaty has been largely successful, the underlying anxiety still remains for Pakistan, because if push comes to shove, India could always block the water supply and no one can really stop them. Also, India can project military power downstream much easier than Pakistan can, who would have to go upstream. This vulnerability is a bitter pill to swallow for Pakistan, and it keeps their security and defense sectors on edge. On the other hand, if Pakistan were to gain full control of Kashmir, India will lose a key strategic advantage. Not only would India lose its leverage, but Pakistan will gain direct access to threatened major population centers in the lowlands of the Punjab region. Kashmir is just simply too important, both strategically and symbolically, for either side to give up, which is why conflict has repeatedly erupted there in the past and why it's likely to continue in the future. Since 1947, the two nations have fought 4 wars, several smaller skirmishes, and endured countless ceasefire violations. As a result, the deeper cost has been their vulnerability to manipulation by global powers. As I stated earlier on in the video, foreign powers love to capitalize and exploit rivalries. It's like an open wound, and both countries can't reach their full potential with a handicap. And that is perhaps the greatest tragedy of all. Instead of becoming pillars of regional prosperity and even global power, as it should have been under a united India, India and Pakistan have been relegated to second or third tier nations. I know that this rivalry isn't the only reason for this, but it definitely contributes to it. What's important to point out, with the ongoing geopolitical shift and the steady decline of the West, the 21st century offers both nations new opportunities, and as a united front, both stand to benefit immensely in a new global order that is forming. The benefits would be immense. Cross-border trade, joint energy projects, regional security frameworks, shared innovation hubs. Basically, the potential is staggering. But every time the line of control is violated, every time a politician uses anti-Pakistan or anti-India rhetoric to rally domestic support, that opportunity slips further away. In the final analysis, the greatest threat to India and Pakistan is not each other, but their inability to transcend the ghosts of partition. The world is moving forward, power dynamics are changing, and will India and Pakistan have the courage to do the same? Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you making it all the way to the end. I'm actually considering making a part 2 to this video since it's such an interesting topic. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to do a deep dive. But for now, please like, share and subscribe. And as always, ciao for now.